Welcome, everyone. We are recording. So we can get started. I just added a note in the chat. So if everyone would just take a minute to contribute to the chat, just your class year, you can share your name if you want to share your name, where you're zooming in from, and then just briefly kind of your small business interest. Are you currently a small business owner? Are you considering small business ownership? Kind of what is the connection between your interest and the webinar? And that will allow us to all kind of get to know each other briefly. My name is Destiny Barletta. I'm the director for Alumni Connections in Wellesley's Career Education Group, and I have three colleagues here with me. I will let them introduce themselves, and then we will move straight into our panelists. I don't want to take too much time from our conversation. The panelists will introduce themselves, and then we will kind of ask some guided questions. But if you have your own questions as we go along, please feel free to put those in the chat and we can kind of monitor the chat to incorporate your questions. And we also will have a time at the end for some additional questions. And if you want to save your question until the end, that's fine. You can ask it using your own voice. You won't need to use the chat. And then at the end, we'll just share a few resources and just a link to the career education webpage because we'll want you all to be aware of the resources, ongoing resources, and advising that are available to all alums, especially if you are navigating some kind of a career transition potentially related to a small business or not. So from our career ed team, we have Becky King and Dana Keep, and we also have Casey Hurley. So Becky, do you want to just introduce yourself?
Well, Becky King, welcome everybody. Glad you're able to join us today.
Hi, my name is Dana Keep, and I'm an alum career advisor, and I hope that this is inspiration for so many people to start their own business. Casey?
Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you all. I'm Casey Hurley. I am the director. I'm a director in career education for a new initiative called the BEAM Initiative. Hopefully some of you have heard about it, but if you haven't, it's a new initiative in career education to promote business careers, entrepreneurship, and financial literacy. And if any of that sounds interesting, please email me and reach out. Nice to meet you all.
So the panelists that we have with us, will start with Lindsay and then go to Joanna and then go to Victoria and then go to Elizabeth. But they will each introduce themselves and then give, maybe a sort of, 3 or 5 minute kind of narration, if you will, of their journey as small business owners, kind of how they began, what their small business looks like, and where they are currently. So we can start with Lindsay.
Okay, hi, I'm Lindsay Fry. I'm the class of 04 at Wellesley. I'm a veterinarian, and I'm very excited to see a fellow Wellesley veterinarian in the group, which is, we are a small but mighty pack. But I saw Jen in there, so that's exciting. So after Wellesley, I went to vet school at Colorado State. I'm still currently in Fort Collins, which is where Colorado State is, and have gone on to specialize in sports medicine and rehabilitation and pain management in animals. And did an internship and then started working at a practice and built a rehabilitation center and pain management center there. It was then bought by a large corporation, which is happening fairly commonly amongst vet clinics. And I worked with a fellow CSU grad, classmate from CSU, and we were both moms of young kids about the same age. And the hospital underwent a fairly big transformation when it was bought by corporate. And we basically decided we wanted to do our own thing with zero business training. So I can tell you about that. So we left together and actually elected to open a practice, just the two of us, with the primary goals of practicing really specialized patient-centered care, kind of boutique medicine, in the pain management, sports medicine, rehab realm, and also be moms to our kids in a functional work-life balance way, which is difficult, but we went into it with those two goals. So designed a business based around the patients and then our families, and that was about almost 8 years ago now. And now we have 2 buildings that kind of function differently. We have 8 doctors working for us and about 12 technicians or nurses kind of equivalent. And it's had ups and downs and challenges, but we're have been pretty successful overall. So that's our story at Red Sage.
Right, I can go next. My name is Joanna Silva. I'm a class of '02. I am co-owner of La Bicyclette Bakery, which is a French artisan bakery based in Brooklyn. We have 4 locations in the Brooklyn area in New York City. I am the non-baking side of the business. So I actually entered into this business with my life partner. So we are both life partners and business partners, which I can share a little bit about kind of how that dynamic works and sometimes doesn't. But he's the baker. He's been a baker all his life and kind of sucked me in. I did not want to be an entrepreneur. I didn't really have any interest in owning my own business. I have been in the corporate world ever since I graduated. So I do HR consulting by day. And it's what I love. It's what I've always done, what I hope to, always continue to do. And so the bakery is kind of my side hustle.
That sounds great. I'll go next. I'm Victoria Lai. I'm in the Washington, D.C. area. I'm the founder of Ice Cream Jubilee. There are 5 locations within Virginia, D.C., and Maryland now. Ice Cream Jubilee specializes in unique flavors of ice cream, stemming from nostalgic favorites to international desserts and boozy cocktails. In 2023, I sold a majority interest and all of the operating stake to some other business entrepreneurs, veteran entrepreneurs, and they're expanding it, keeping the brand. And I'm sort of consulting, doing nonprofit stuff, looking for the next venture.
Y'all are keeping this super sweet. We were told like 3 to 5 minutes, and I'm like, I've got a big story here, so I'm probably going to take my whole 5 minutes. But my name's Elizabeth Senecal. I graduated '04 from Wellesley College. I was actually born and raised in Wellesley, and I own and operate She's a Handyman LLC. I started it in January 2017. I am the business. I have no employees and I have a very small overhead, right? All I need for my business is my tools. I specialize in small to moderate residential repairs and maintenance. So I drive my little Honda Fit, and all the people and all the guys are, you need a truck. You need a real truck to be a real handyman. And I'm like, I got my Honda Fit. I get better gas mileage than all of you. And like, I'm picking up all your breadcrumbs that you leave behind. So who's got more money in their pocket, right? So I love what I do. But the question is, how did I get to what I was doing? It's a little bit of a story, because when I was at Wellesley, I majored in French and psychology, and I 10, 9, 8, 7. Hi, kiddo. 5. Blast off. Sorry, a little distracted. So at Wellesley, I majored in French and psychology. In senior year, there happened to be a job posting on the Wellesley job listings of looking for a math teacher. The best candidate for this job would be a woman able to coach soccer and basketball. Well, at the time, I was the only Wellesley student who was on both the soccer and basketball teams, and algebra and geometry were my favorite subjects in middle school. So I took that job. I loved it. 2 years in, it was a private school. I'd always wanted to go live in Africa at some point. So I decided to join the Peace Corps. I lived in Senegal in a remote village with no running water and no electricity. And this actually all comes together because when I moved to Louisiana, I drove down to Louisiana, which is where I started my business, where I've had my business for 8 years. And I'm currently in the process of moving my business to Virginia. The potholes were really similar. Like in New Orleans, I really felt like I was back in Senegal a little bit. So it all comes around. So after the Peace Corps in Senegal, I worked in agriculture. That led me to do a master's at the University of Michigan in natural resources and environment. I concentrated in conservation biology and sustainable systems. How the heck did you become a handyman, Elizabeth, right? Where is this going? Well, what I tell people is I've always led my life as a bunch of lily pads. I've never done anything linear. It's always just been one thing to the next. And as my father always said to me, Elizabeth, you make your own good luck in life by the decisions you make along the way. So here I am making these decisions. I really had no trajectory of like, what do I want to do in 10 years? What do I want to do in 15 years? I've never had a life goal like that. I just am very in the moment. It was just the way I live. So I did my grad program in the environment, and I was really having a tough time finding a job. I was just like, nothing feels right, nothing. So I went back to middle school, private school math teaching, which I love. And so I landed a job back in Massachusetts. I ended up choosing to live with my parents for a couple of years to save money because I thought it was ridiculous to be spending $1,500 on rent when I was either at work or in Boston because I was online dating trying to find a partner. 5 years later, I'm still online dating. And I decided this is silly for me to restrict my radius to a 20-mile radius of Boston. Let me click anywhere. So I clicked anywhere and up popped this woman in New Orleans, Louisiana. Long story short, we chatted, we met. I moved down to New Orleans for her. Well, not for her. I just moved down to pursue a relationship. And also I knew at the time I was burnt out from teaching and I was ready to do something different. So I packed my little Honda Fit, drove down, hit those potholes in Louisiana, felt like I was home in Senegal, and was in this relationship. Well, I was burnt out from teaching, so I didn't start teaching. She happened to know a friend who had purchased a Katrina home that was stripped down to the studs, and he hired me as a laborer to help him on the home. And that prior summer, I had done the Carpentry for Women course up in Vermont with Yestermorrow Design Build School. It was an extraordinary school. For a week, I was taught by two women. We built a shed together. It was incredible. And I remember saying to myself in that class, gosh, I wish I could just do this for my job. Like, I wish I could just use my hands and measure and cut and build and like, there it is, right? And so during my time working on that Katrina house, I saw the systems of the house come together under these licensed professionals. I helped them out. I actually installed the supply plumbing. It was amazing. It was awesome. Then I worked briefly for a woman who was flipping homes. I worked as one of her laborers. And by that time, I had acquired some tools, right? I acquired my own tools and I was really enjoying it. And I didn't mind getting dirty. I loved being under homes and in attics because, like, I was the goalkeeper at Wellesley College. Like, I dive. I love getting dirty. I love using my body, right? And math, precision, measuring, like it all comes together. But when I was working for this woman, I was like, man, like, I know I'm worth more than like a $20 an hour laborer. So it was at that time, and the relationship that I moved down to New Orleans for had fizzled by that point. So instead of moving back up to Wellesley, Massachusetts, I decided to stay in New Orleans and rent a condo and start my business. So when I came up with the name of She's a Handyman, I immediately trademarked it because I said to myself, I think this name is going to have value down the road. And also, it's a very transportable thing, what I'm going to be doing. And if I'm in Louisiana now, I don't know if I'm going to be in Louisiana in 5, 10, 15 years. And sure enough, right now, guys, I'm in Louisiana, but I wanted to bring my work hat and my work jersey, but they're up in Virginia because I'm like halfway between moving my locations. Anyways, I trademarked my name, and I'm grateful that I did that because a couple of years ago, I happened to look online and there was actually a business named She's a Handyman in Virginia. And I was like, oh, I'm too tired. I don't need to worry about that. Well, sure enough, I'm moving to Virginia. I got that handled. But I know I'm over time, but just to wrap it up. So I have had this lily pad of a story that has come together beautifully. And I've loved being this handyman business. When I started my business in January 2017, February came and I was like, Elizabeth, what the heck are you doing? Like that was my only form of income. And I said to myself, give myself 6 months. And if in 6 months I'm still in the same position, reevaluate, go back to teaching, et cetera. Well, as soon as Mardi Gras finished, man, they found me. Next door neighborhood was one of the best portals I ever could have used. And I've never looked back. So yeah, that's how my story's gone, and I'll throw it back to you guys.
Excellent. Thank you all for that. So let's get right into it. You all have such different occupy different spaces in the kind of small business ecosystem, which I think is really great. So from where you are now, what has surprised you the most about this kind of small business journey? Like if you were kind of talking to the version of yourself before this happened, from now? What really were you like, I never anticipated this. I didn't plan for it. Maybe I should have, but maybe I couldn't have. Like, what does that look like in terms of, really surprising? And what do you find most challenging? And we can get to the what do you find most rewarding part next. And you can jump in, maybe start with Victoria.
So what do you find most challenging and what was most surprising to you?
Yeah.
I'm in an interesting position because I was surprised by so many things while I was doing it, but now, like, having exited, thinking about like having a 2020 hindsight in it. I mean, one thing that surprised me, and this was a negative surprise. I didn't really understand credit card charges. So the 3% or more on every transaction. And so that hit me very hard. And then also in Washington, D.C., I knew that minimum wage was going up starting in 2014, but it went up 100% in 5 years, $1 every year for a bunch of years. So that was very surprising. I mean, another surprising thing was like how far marketing can get you. Like, if you have a unique product, like your AI, whatever, is going to change the world, or you have an invention that's so unique, that is amazing. I have ice cream. Ice cream on some fundamental level, people want their vanilla to taste like the vanilla they remembered. So uniqueness isn't always a good thing. However, the story that you tell with it will bring people in the door. And if you're not comfortable storytelling, or you're only comfortable storytelling on email, you don't get out in front of camera, you can't learn social media, you're doing yourself a disservice. You can really drive your own business, and to pay somebody to do that for you is just, it's not the best way to spend your money. What I find most challenging was managing my own stress about certain things that I couldn't control. At some point, one of the reasons that I left the brick and mortar retail business was because I had to be the guarantor on all of my construction properties. And, I started out, I was dating somebody, and that was great. I could just make my own choices. By the time I ended, I had 2 little kids. We all lived together. I had a stepson who was going off to college. I just couldn't risk it anymore. I just didn't want to anymore. So I switched that. But you can't underestimate. I mean, honestly, like, I feel like the most underappreciated thing about this economy right now is the level of stress that economic burdens put on individuals. And as a small business owner, it ebbed and flowed every time it rained. And I knew a rain on a Saturday, and I knew, yeah, Joanna, you know it, right? Like, there was one Saturday that one summer, I was talking to one of my, like Italian restaurant neighbors or whatever. And I was like, it rains every weekend this summer. And he was like, 15 Saturdays, 17 Sundays. Like, he knew exactly. And that hurts your bottom line. That hurts your tips. That hurts everybody. Anyhow, so that's what was most challenging for me. If you know, you know.
I'm happy to share one thing that surprised me. As I mentioned, I had absolutely no interest in becoming a business owner or an entrepreneur. I don't have that kind of drive in me. I think because I am so risk averse, that, to Victoria's point, the stress levels are way too high. I'm always thinking about what could go wrong. But I was surprised, having been in the business world for so long, that actually some of the things that I just took for granted that I had learned over the years, just being in corporate, actually lent themselves really nicely to some of the things that I needed to know to run a business. And that was actually my role in the business. As I mentioned, my partner is the baker, so he knows all that side of the business. What he didn't know is how to run a business. Victoria, you hit on something so basic, like, yeah, every time someone pays you with a credit card, you do not get all of that money. Some of that money goes to, you know, Visa or Square or, you know, whatever processor you use. That's just, you know, one little thing. Taxes, oh my God, just the worst. Figuring out, you know, at the end of the year, how you're going to get taxed. And, you know, especially for those of us with a very small business where it's, you know, an LLC, you are your business is you, the taxes all kind of commingle. That's just hard. Yeah, by the way, good call out. Yes. Taxes on the mind, clearly. But yeah, I realized that a lot of the things that I had learned over the years in corporate just came very naturally and, you know, lent themselves well so that I could be that other half to my partner, who, you know, was not comfortable at all reading real estate contracts, right? I mean, I had never technically read a real estate contract, but a contract's a contract. And so once I started reading it, I went, I'm seeing some weird things here. You know, so just things like that, if you are in the corporate world and you're thinking like, I'm going to make this leap, the leap was not as big as I thought it would be.
Interesting. And most challenging, Joanna, over the years? Or a challenge, maybe not the most challenging, but or maybe a consistent challenge, like something you feel like you continue to kind of try to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, mine's unique to me. I alluded to it before of, you know, my husband also being my business partner. So yeah, we've actually now, and I'm sure this will change again, but we've actually now reached a point where we don't talk about the bakery at home. Because otherwise that is literally all we talk about. So kind of have separated a bit and tried to not make it all consuming. It was for a while, and I think that put a little bit of a strain on our relationship, honestly. So it's awesome to get into business with someone that, you know, your values are aligned, that, you know, you like them as a person, right? You trust them implicitly. All of that is great. But there are kind of downsides to, yeah, living with your business partner and raising children with them and all of that. And Lindsay, not to put you on the spot, but I know you also started your business with a friend, obviously not necessarily a, you know, your partner, but I'm curious, you know, to see if you have any comment on that as well.
Yeah, I think it was really important for both of us that we were aligned, not only in, for us, like the style of medicine we wanted to practice, just because it was different and unique and very relationship based and small scale. But then we also were moms with similar age kids. We sort of were from a similar socioeconomic background. Like no one was giving a lot more than the other. Like everything felt very equal. And it was important for us to be 50-50 partners. So we are, and still are. And I think we talked about a little bit about this on the panel on our own, but she's actually going through some pretty major life changes right now. And riding that alongside her is certainly challenging, where I'm like, but everything was great. We're just like, we're doing great. How everything is the same. And I think partnerships are challenging and unpredictable. They can be incredibly rewarding and wonderful. And I admire any of you who are doing it by yourself. I mean, none of us are by ourselves, right? But like bearing all of that alone feels potentially even scarier than the ups and downs of a partnership. But clear boundaries, clear exit plans, clear, you know, we always talk about communication being clear and kind, that like unclear communication becomes unkind. And maintaining that in a partnership or even with staff, I think is really important. But partnerships are hard to predict. So just being flexible, adaptable, and clear, I think is important. And challenging. So, but I will say one of the things that surprised me when I was thinking about what surprised me is just the incredible value of relationships on all levels. Like when we left our old practice, the number of clients that we had built relationships with over time, one of them was a CPA and he's still our CPA. And one of them was an HR and accounting person from a car dealership, and she does all our accounting and HA. And I mean, they were like, you saved my dog and I owe my life to you. And they like come and they just like give and give and give. And that's how your business sustains itself, is developing these true, honest relationships, and they will support you and carry you through. And I couldn't believe the level of that we discovered as we were just starting as two veterinarians who had a dream to run a practice that was really, really different. And so you never know which relationship is going to be the one that like totally saves your butt. But maintaining good relationships was great. The biggest challenge I think people have said is, I think it's very hard to turn it off. Like you have more flexibility in your schedule, but there's always a part of me that's thinking about, is the schedule full? Are the patients showing up? Are we charging for everything? Or like, is everybody happy? Does everyone want to quit? Like, so I have a very hard time silencing that. And actually my business partner and I go to therapy once a month together, which is also very helpful. And our therapist calls that the voice of scarcity. It's kind of like the rain. And that voice of scarcity can be very loud at times, but it's always there whispering like, it's all going to fall apart and you are on all the loans. Like, but silencing that and being able to quiet that, I feel like is one of the biggest challenges. And it's always riding there on your shoulder.
Wow, that's great. Do you have anything to add, Elizabeth, just about how your experience, I mean, given that you have always kind of been a lone ranger, as it were, in the work that you've done, and that seems to have been a little bit by intention in terms of like growing and franchising, and like it seems like there have been various ways that you have kind of considered how this might, quote, evolve, and then made slightly different decisions. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So first on Lindsay's point about like not being able to turn off that switch, right? It's kind of like a dimmer, but it's always on. That's what I experienced when I was a teacher. And it was exhausting to me. I loved education. I loved teaching. And I'm still a private math tutor, and I still contemplate potentially someday going back into the standard teaching class. But that was something that really took my energy away. And when I started my handyman business, one of my favorite things about it is that I go to the job, I do it, it's done, it's closed, I go home, and I have energy to cook, right? So like I really made a significant shift in that regard. I was very present to that black and white nature of it. Victoria's comment about how that 3% or more adds up when you take a credit card. When I started, it took me about maybe 2.5 years into when I first started my business, I was like typing up an Excel sheet, printing it out, like giving it to them for payment. I was like super old school. I didn't actually have tech related to try to invoice or anything. So I was very slow on that. And about 2.5 years in, I invested in QuickBooks. So I do recommend QuickBooks account. The things I recommend before you start a business is open up your business bank account before you start the business. Get that set up, get your money in there that you're going to invest in your business with, and everything that your receipts, you only use that business credit card. And that is how it's helped me separate my work from my personal. And I learned that because when I was working on that Katrina house, Josh's mother-in-law one day said to me, Elizabeth, if you ever start your own handyman business, they need good handymans in New Orleans. If you ever start your own handyman business, make sure you open up your bank account first. And that was the best advice I ever got. I did it, and it was great. Joanna mentioned about taxes. For a small business like me, I'm never quite sure how much I'm going to make because in taxes, because I create my own schedule, which is one of the things I love. And yet I don't have a fixed income every week or two from that paycheck. I could, if I decided to craft my schedule around making sure I earn X, Y, amount each week or two. But that's where quarterly taxes, when I eventually so I 2.5 years in, I started QuickBooks and I found a CPA. She monitors my QuickBooks. I bought an iPad as well at that time so that when I leave a job, I can immediately do an electronic invoice related to that 3% that Victoria talked about. I say to the client, I say, here are your payment options: cash, check, or you could do electronic, credit card, debit card, whatever. I could swipe it, whatever. They could put it in the computer. But if they do that, I say add 3.5% to the invoice. It's a processing fee. And I put that on the client to pay because I'm a very, very small business. So that every dollar really adds up for me. And they have the option to do check or cash, which is without that extra cost. So I feel fine tacking that on, and I've always tacked that on with no problem, but I am transparent to them up front about it will be tacked on. What else did I put here? Surprising or challenging. I still struggle with, because I love doing the work, I still struggle with like the office stuff. I don't have a partner who does the office stuff for me. I kind of let my receipts kind of pile up a little bit. And then like once every week or two, I'll like sit down and I will enter them all and, keep them all in my books. So I still find that challenging. I would say most surprising is my mother's advice when I started my business. She said, Elizabeth, she was her own business owner with a childcare business. And she said, Elizabeth, the best form of marketing is word of mouth. And she discouraged me from, I had these big visions of like, I'm going to get She's a Handyman with Rosie the River, like on the side of my Honda Fit, right? So when I'm driving through I-10, everybody knows me. But then Josh's mother-in-law was like, Elizabeth, don't do that because there's so many uninsured drivers in Louisiana. Our insurance costs are so high for cars. She said, there are so many uninsured drivers. There are some people out there that look for that because they know you have insurance. So they will hit your car expecting to get paid out from that. I word of mouth, that's all I've ever done. I've never paid for advertising. I've paid for the t-shirts I wear, my baseball cap that I wear, and word of mouth is really powerful. I would love to just touch on briefly. I saw Andrea ask briefly about how did the trademark thing, how did I do that? Go to USTPO, I think is the website. At that time, 8 years ago, I had posted something on Craigslist with like She's a Handyman and like a picture of me doing the work. I took a screenshot of that, submitted that as my specimen to the government, and they approved that. And then it was like a year or two later, you have to go into the system again, show that you're still actively using the trademark. And then, or maybe it's year 5 and 6. And then I just renewed it again back in for 8, 9. So you kind of have to stay on top of it a little bit. So
Elizabeth,
check into,
Elizabeth,
yeah.
Yes, I have a trademark as well. Mindfully Fits a trademark. My question was, how did you handle when someone else was using your trademark? That was my question. Thank you.
Got it. So in this particular case, I got really lucky because do I have time to answer this question or do y'all want to?
Yeah, go ahead. Except you just went to mute. There you are.
I got really lucky when I started reaching out to trademark lawyers. They were like, this could get really expensive, just depends on. I got really lucky because I found a lawyer who said, it's not about doing a cease and desist right away. We actually need to figure out what this person does because online, even though it showed that their business was registered with this name, there was no evidence, no marketing, no telephone number, no advertisement, no face. There was nothing related to this business. To me, it was a ghost business. And they said, well, so I hired them to write a letter to this person that said, a heads up, Elizabeth Senecal, she's a handyman, is coming to town and actually working in your service industry. If you are using the name to do in the same industry that she is, you must stop using it. Please let us know how you're using the name. He did say how my attorney did say, however, that if, for instance, Sandy, you talked about wanting to start your own quilting business. He said, if, however, this person is using She's a Handyman for quilting, that's not actually competing with my industry. So the way the attorney explained it to me is legally that person is still allowed to use She's a Handyman to service the quilting industry. And I can use She's a Handyman to service the handyman industry. But when I go to register my business with the state, because She's a Handyman is already an entity registered with it, I have to register, say, as like Senecal Handyman Services doing business as She's a Handyman. Fortunately, this woman got right back to him and said, I started my business during COVID. I no longer have clients. That's great that she's moving to town. It's a great name. Good luck to her. I'm not going to renew my business in April.
Oh.
So I think literally today, I think is like her renewal date. So she's letting it sit there. But what my attorney did say to me is, because she's not renewing it, it'll still be in the state's system. So I still can't go and use She as a Handyman as an entity to register until she formally closes the business. And it costs her $25 to do that. And I'm thinking I might personally just write her a letter with $25 and say, here, could you please do that? Because she seems like a kind person. Or I register it as, Senecal Handyman Services doing business as, or I wait a few more months until it kind of closes at the state level. So I got really lucky about that.
Thank you so much. I
yeah.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Good question. And that's like those little kind of stories. I probably each of your journeys is like marked along the way with like all of these kind of little things. So can you think and then tell us about kind of as your journeys have come along, what is something that you have had to learn along the way and kind of to flush that out a little bit? How did you kind of decide that? Like, oh, this is something that like either I need to learn or I need to outsource? Like, how do you kind of make that decision? Like, okay, what am I doing? Like, how do I invest my time in terms of, this is a need. Am I going to learn this? Am I going to outsource this? And then for the thing or things that you did learn along the way, were there specific kind of resources that you used to do that you think are really helpful? Like, how did you kind of assess, yes, I need to learn this. I'm going to learn it on my own. How am I going to do that? And we can start wherever. Maybe Victoria again?
Sure. So I started Ice Cream Jubilee actually as a blog. I started as a blog because it was, well, I mean, I think most people on this call are like sort of the same decade-ish. Like there was no Instagram. There was, and I just learned, I learned social media and storytelling as it went. Like my background beforehand, I went to Wellesley thinking that I would work in government, wanted to work in the White House, do political campaigns, and I found out that being able to churn out a press release really quickly, which I can write really quickly, but not as quickly as ChatGPT can these days. So, but being able to do that really quickly and knowing how to put to step into the shoes of a reporter, whether it's a local, free press, photograph glossy like Edible or something like that, or the local NBC affiliate, or Fox News talking about the pandemic. Like, what does the reporter want to know, and how can I get them to tell my story? That sort of thing I just applied to social media. That was really important. Another important thing for me to learn on my own that was not nearly as intuitive was how to value my business and set up for sale. Like that is almost impossible because there is no right price or right value for your business. And you should be like practicing this even if you're not ready to sell. Like even if you think that maybe for the right price, you might want to wind this down or hand it over to your partner or something like that. The right price is what you're willing to sell for and what somebody else is willing to pay. So if you go and look at examples on the internet, they're going to say, I mean, they just have ridiculous things. They're like, oh, it's going to be a multiple. It's going to be a 5x multiple of, your net income, yada, yada, yada. But they could be talking about a McDonald's franchise that's right on 5 huge intersections or whatever. They could be talking about something so totally different. So you just need to be able to financially tell your story that way and get comfortable with your numbers, right? Like, are you comfortable leaving with the shirt on your back and no debt? Are you comfortable leaving with, enough to whatever? Like, are you comfortable giving up your brand if you get $100,000 extra or $20,000 extra? Are you comfortable selling for a lot of money, but you have to work for them for an indefinite period of time? Like those are all deals that have been pitched and only you know that. So you have to learn that yourself. It's sort of like dating. Like if you know yourself, then you can make the right decision going forward. If you don't, you'll always be figuring that along the way. And if anybody has questions about like exiting and valuation, I'm certainly not, I think maybe even as beneficial that I'm not like a financy person, because I really needed to read and read and reread it. And I learned mostly from talking to other people who are pursuing sales of their businesses, especially in the food and beverage. You'll have like your Korean taco place that like wants to sell to a private investor because they hope that somebody else will have to franchise, and then they're facing with a proposal maybe that an investor just wants them to create franchises, and if it's successful in 5 to 10 years, maybe they'll buy it, right? Like you learn from other people's missteps when you're truly trying to be honest, and learn about it, because they're learning from you too. And it's also like, ugh, like if you know, you know, like in the food and beverage industry, and I think in so many industries, like it's so hard. And to really, like your partner, unless you're in it together, will support you, but not really know like what you're going through and the decisions that you're going through, not like another similar business owner. So let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to help.
Lindsay, thinking about the work that you do now, kind of being an owner versus just being, you know, kind of vet, you probably have a lot of equipment, I would imagine, across all of your different kind of spaces. Has there been anything there? I mean, in terms of, you know, what that looks like, I would imagine that's one of the key differences, kind of owning versus not.
Certainly, like and then you go to conferences and stuff and everything's really shiny and new. And so you want all the shiny and new. And you're like, yeah. But we were very slow to add big equipment. So like, and we're a small specialty practice, so I didn't have to worry about covering general practice type stuff for a while. Like I could work with, again, those relationships are so key. So I worked with primary care veterinarians to get x-rays done or get a CT or get, you know, big diagnostics are a lot of the equipment. And I focused on equipment that supported my specialty, which is pain management and sports medicine, and started small and worked up. But it is, you know, it's really interesting to hear Victoria say, like, if I were to sell now, like we're considering moving, I don't know, like you're always evaluating, I think is really a good recommendation. Like, don't assume you're going to ride your business into the sunset. You know, we have taken on a lot of debt to buy a lot of equipment. And we use it and it's paying for itself monthly. So it's not causing stress in that sense. But if you want to make a quick pivot, you know, the more you get anchored down, the less easy it becomes to do that quick pivot. But I will say, like, we now have a lot of the shiny stuff and we do excellent patient care with it and excellent diagnostics. And I like taking my own x-rays versus getting somebody else's. So there's certainly advantages to crafting your niche and being the best at that piece of it. And sometimes equipment is kind of essential for that.
And have any of you kind of found along the way kind of resources for your own kind of professional development, business training, learning that you think have been, you know, like really pivotal?
Back to Lindsay's point on relationships, I've learned not from sort of formal learning channels. Like I attended a few, you know, sessions that were sponsored by New York City or, you know, by Small Business Bureau, stuff like that, that were not useful at all. I really was hoping that they would be, but they actually weren't that great. And so then just, yeah, to your point, Lindsay, of like, you know, you saved someone's cat once. And so now they happen to be an accountant. And so now you can ping them on accounting questions. That's exactly the same that we've done, is just over time developed a network of sort of advisors that like our bread, right? That, you know, we just kind of ping every once in a while when we're not quite sure that we're on the right track, or we're having a hard time making a decision, like, you know, A or B, can you help, you know, just talk us through that, or get a second opinion? Even, you know, we have a CPA, but sometimes we're like, she didn't explain that very well. Like, is there someone else we could just like run by, you know, just be like, this is what the CPA is, sound right to you? And have them go, yep, that's right. And we're like, okay, cool, we can move on, right? So less the formal learning that I thought I would have, and more just being able to draw on others' expertise. And to Victoria's point, also sometimes watching others take their missteps and go, okay, we're not going to do that. We certainly had that in the bakery world, with a large bakery chain, French bakery chain, that came to New York, went big. And as they say, you go big or you go home. Well, they went big and they went home. So that did not work out for them. So we took the complete opposite approach and opened a very, very small shop as our first shop. And yeah, have continued to keep it very, very small, because we saw that others went in the other direction. It didn't work out for them. So.
And I would say something I learned that now hearing you guys say it, I can see it more in myself, is there's a lot of formulaic stuff out there. And it's probably business specific. Like if you look up how to run a veterinary practice, it'll be like, this is what your cost of goods should be, and this is what payroll should be, and this is what, and everything should follow this algorithm. But if that algorithm doesn't fit with your vision, like you'll be fighting it the whole time. So for us, like we wanted to provide maternity leave. Like no veterinary practices do that anywhere. And that was really important to us as a woman-owned business. And all of our advisors were like, no, never do that, never do that. And we were like, no, we are going to do that. Like that is important to us and we're going to do it. So like, if there's a vision you have, like there's probably a way to make it work. And if it feels important to you, don't give into an algorithm that's established, because it doesn't necessarily, like, learn from it and take pieces from it and use it as a guide, but take things that are important to you and make them happen.
Yeah, Lindsay, I from the conversations we had prior, just hearing how values driven you guys were right from the start. I feel like that mat leave is like a good example of that, right? Where that was important to you. You weren't going to back down. You didn't care what, you know, what the experts said or whatever. Like that was a value. It's a core value. And so I love that. I love hearing that you can be successful being values driven, because sometimes it feels like you have to make that choice. Like you're either gonna, you know, stick to your guns and stick to your values, or you know, be true to your values, or succeed. And it's like, wait, could I do both? Is that an option? And it's hard sometimes to see success in doing both.
Excellent. I want to be mindful of questions because I want people who are with us today to have a chance to share their questions. And I know Susanna already just put in kind of, if people are willing to share, both our panelists and others too, for people who are kind of already in this, you know, in the kind of the swirl of the small business world. How do you kind of talk to that voice of scarcity? Like, do you have a mantra? Do you have a kind of technique? Like, how do you deal with that, if anyone is willing to share? And then others, feel free to just come off mute and share your question, put a question in the chat. Like, it seems like we can kind of navigate this together. Thinking about how Dana had a question, thinking about how you define success, which I know has been a part of Elizabeth's kind of initial business plan from the very beginning. It seems like that's a part of the values conversation. So if anyone wants to address that.
I saw a question for Becky that I wanted to chime in on. What did you splurge on? I splurged on professional photos. Worked with an up and coming professional photographer who I liked, really would have benefited from the exposure, and just locked her in. I think that especially with food, it goes all the way.
I splurged on, and I wouldn't call it splurging. I would say making a good investment on good tools. I buy good tools. I don't get the cheap stuff because it's good. So I get what I pay for. I know I'm going to be in this for a while. I invested in good tools. I wanted to briefly touch on franchising. People have talked about franchising. This came up a bit. People have said, "Oh, Elizabeth, you should franchise." And Destiny, you even made mention of me franchising. Just to clarify, I have not franchised. I've trademarked my business name, which means people can't use it if they're working in my industry, in my service area. But I actually, what I've learned is that franchising for me and for what my business means to me and for what going to success, what is success, is maintaining my business. But like, I am the business, and it's not just about doing the repairs. It's also my business is so much different than a food and beverage industry where there's a menu and it's mathematical, there's measurement. I bring so many soft skills to what I do. Remember how I said I majored in French and psychology? Well, I've had some clients that are French. I speak French with them when I work. I do my work in French. The psychology aspect, the people skills, the soft skills, is very hard to translate and copy and paste me as an entity in their home. Yeah, so I just wanted to say that I'm brainstorming how I can maybe franchise, but it's hard at this level.
I think giving the voice of scarcity a name was just really helpful for me. Like, and then I can recognize it and acknowledge that I am hearing the voice of scarcity and it's scaring me. And I either need to be like, hey, I'm okay, and I need to just shut it up for a little bit, or I say, okay, if I'm truly worried, what can I do to be proactive? Like, do I need to write a blog? Do I need to go visit some referring clinics? Do I need to, like, for me, if I feel like I'm doing something proactive about it, it silences it. But you can't do it all the time or you drown. So learning to be like, hey, it's okay. I hear you, but I'm 8 years in. It goes up and down. Like, it's going to be okay. Like, sometimes just naming it and shutting it up is is helpful.
Kendra, your question on, if you don't have a financial background, yeah, that is totally me. I am like math allergic. And I think that is that for me was one of the, more stressful pieces is I don't know what I don't know. And it's not really that I'm bad at math. I mean, calculators exist, right? So it's not that part. It's that I'm bad at financial reasoning. So I can't tell when something is off, just kind of like, yeah, I don't have that sense of like something is not right here. And what happens when you rely on accountants or financial advisors is that they don't, I think, at least for me, my experience, most of them don't know how to talk to people like me because they are quite financially literate and always have been kind of numbers people. And so they don't know how to explain to me. And I feel very uncomfortable when I don't understand the explanation. They're sort of like, just trust me. So for me, it was just basically asking a million questions. And we went through 4 accountants before we landed on the one that we have now, because I'm sure they were doing a great job in terms of like managing the books and doing our taxes. It wasn't that they were doing a poor job. It's just that they couldn't explain it to me in a way that I could understand. And so that for me was quite important because I wanted to truly understand it so that I could make kind of the right decisions and not have to rely on them all the time. And also just Google everything. Google and Reddit is basically how I run my business. And then, people like you guys that, you can share stories and lessons learned.
Some good resources being shared in the chat. Thanks to everyone who is doing that. That's really interesting, Joanna. I appreciate that. We hear, I think, in a lot of different ways about how to kind of trust our instinct and but what does that really mean? And I think your example is so good around, not necessarily thinking that anything was, not kind of happening appropriately, but just kind of being committed to something as important as accountancy, to the business, to like really finding the right fit. Like, how am I going to be committed to like ensuring that, where we land is really meeting my needs. And that takes its own kind of perseverance, right? And not just kind of calming that voice. It's like, oh, it's fine, like it's getting done, it's whatever, but to really give yourself space to say, like, I need to understand this. That's where the value for me is in the long run. That's great.
I put our values in the chat as a PDF, so if anybody wants to see it, can check it out. And we share that with all new employees. It's part of our handbook, and yeah.
And yes, we will share the recording of our conversation with all the folks who have registered. And we also can share the kind of URLs for the businesses, and folks have been willing to share their emails if there are questions, especially if there are kind of more nuanced things that you would like to follow up with any of the panelists about. They, I think, have been generous with their time to help. Yeah, are there other final questions or words to leave with? There are a lot of resources that you can find, basically all the resources you can find, on the interweb for, the kind of real specifics related to small business. But we wanted to provide this as an opportunity to really just come together in a kind of safe environment, a Wellesley environment, with a kind of more honest conversation, some, supportive and maybe some familiar faces to kind of create a slightly different space to come together and kind of share and tell each other's stories.
One word I just wanted to bring up, which came in our prior meetings together, as when we were prepping for the panel, but related to, like, how do you define success, or what leads somebody to a successful business? I think a really big part of it that the four of us share is a passion for what we do. Passion really drives us to be motivated, to continue to learn, to put our best foot forward, to conquer the obstacles. I mean, I can't imagine running a business that I created, owned, without feeling passionate about it. So if you have that passion, I think you're really, you're already ahead of the game a little bit. Hold it close.
Yeah, so for additional resources and ways to stay connected as kind of Wellesley group, the Wellesley networking and mentorship platform is called The Hive. And if you just Google Wellesley Hive, you'll find a link to it. And there is a space in the Hive. So the Hive, think of it kind of like LinkedIn, but just for Wellesley, just for alums, students, faculty, and staff. No one else is kind of allowed to be in that group. But there is a small business directory in the Hive. And so if any of you would like to add your small businesses to the directory, that's a great way to do that. We just launched that recently. So if you add now, you'll be really kind of on the early end of that. And then there's space in the Hive for groups. And so you can, kind of connect as a group. And if you think that there are kind of more specific groups that you would like to see in the Hive, you are welcome to reach out to me, and I can kind of create new groups. If there's kind of a small business support group that there's interest in, we can make that happen. But it's a great space. You have to log in, so that, that is a thing, but no ads, no bots, and no fees. So the Hive is great in that way. Good. Thank you so much to all of our panelists. We really appreciate your time, your authenticity, your honesty, and your willingness to kind of share your journey in support of other alums. This has been great.
Thank you, guys. That was wonderful.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great rest of tax day. Woohoo.
Yes.
Go blue.
Business taxes and personal taxes.
Take care.
And go to
everybody.
reunions. They're fun.
That's
Yes.
right. There you go.
Thank you so much, everybody.